three desperate girls wrote, "Visit our dad. He's so lonely." On Christmas Eve, Emily knocked on that cold mansion door and found a broken widower, daughters starving for joy, and the answer to a prayer she'd stopped believing in. Emily Bennett found the note on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked between her lesson planner and the stack of spelling tests she'd been meaning to grade for 3 days. The handwriting was careful, painstakingly neat in that way only 6-year-olds trying their absolute hardest can manage. Some letters leaned too far to the right, others stubbornly upright, and the Y in Daddy had a tail that swooped dramatically off the page. "Please visit our dad. He's lonely. We live at 847 Maple Ridge. He needs a friend. Love, Lily, Grace, and Sophie." Emily read it 3 times, her throat tightening with each word. She could picture them, 3 identical blonde heads bent together during free time yesterday, whispering and giggling nervously while they wrote it. She'd noticed them huddled in the reading corner but hadn't interrupted. The Parker triplets rarely played with other children, and seeing them engaged in anything together felt like a small victory. The classroom was empty now, sunlight streaming through the windows and catching dust motes that danced in the afternoon quiet. Emily sank into her desk chair, still holding the note like it might dissolve if she gripped it too loosely. Her fingers traced the careful letters, and she felt something crack open in her chest, that same ache she'd been carrying for 2 years, since Michael's car had spun out on black ice and left her a widow at 30. She knew loneliness. God, did she know loneliness. But Nathan Parker, the man was legend in their small Connecticut town. CEO of Parker Technologies, a company that had revolutionized something with computers that Emily didn't fully understand, but knew had made him extraordinarily wealthy. She'd seen him exactly twice during the 3 months since the girls had started in her first-grade class, once at the initial parent meeting, where he'd arrived 20 minutes late, shaken her hand with barely a glance, and left before she'd finished explaining the curriculum. The second time was last week's winter concert, where he'd sat in the back row, alone, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle working even from the stage. He'd left before the final song ended. Emily thought about the girls, about how they arrived at school each morning in a black SUV driven by a woman who introduced herself as the nanny, Mrs. Chen, about how their clothes were always immaculate, their hair always perfectly braided, their lunch boxes packed with organic everything, about how they never forgot homework or permission slips or supplies, but also about how Lily had cried silently during story time last week when Emily read "Love You Forever," tears streaming down her face while she stared at her lap. About how Grace had drawn her family portrait during art class, 4 stick figures where the mommy figure was just a floating angel with wings above the others. About how Sophie, the quietest of the 3, had asked Emily yesterday if teachers ever came to students' houses just to say hi. "Miss Bennett?" Sophie had whispered, tugging on Emily's sleeve during lunch. "Does your family have Christmas?" "I visit my parents for Christmas, sweetie." "Why do you ask?" Sophie had looked at her sisters, then back at Emily. "We don't think our daddy knows how to do Christmas anymore." Emily had opened her mouth to respond, but Sophie had already scurried away, leaving Emily with a hollow feeling she couldn't quite name. Now, sitting alone in her classroom with their note, that hollow feeling had expanded into something impossible to ignore. She pulled out her phone and typed 847 Maple Ridge into the Maps application. 15 minutes from the school, 15 minutes from this moment, to a decision she wasn't sure she had the courage to make. What would she even say? "Hello, Mr. Parker. Your daughters think you're lonely, so I thought I'd intrude on your evening." The whole thing felt absurd, inappropriate even. She was their teacher, not a social worker, not a grief counselor, not whatever this situation required. Emily looked at the note again, the crayon marks where they'd pressed too hard, the careful way they'd signed all 3 names, probably taking turns writing 1 letter each. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Honey, are you coming for dinner? Dad's making pot roast." She typed back, "Not tonight, Mom. Something I need to do." Before she could second-guess herself, Emily grabbed her coat and bag, the note clutched in her hand like a permission slip she'd written for herself. The drive to Maple Ridge took exactly 14 minutes. Emily spent 13 of them composing and discarding opening lines. "Hi, I'm your daughter's teacher, and I'm concerned," too formal. Your girls asked me to visit. Too direct. I hope this isn't weird, but it was definitely weird. Maple Ridge wasn't just a street, it was a statement. Each house sat on at least 3 acres, separated by perfect hedges and iron gates. The Parker house, she recognized it from the address, loomed at the end of a circular driveway, all glass and stone and modern angles that seemed designed to keep the world at bay. Emily parked her 10-year-old Honda Civic next to a fountain that probably cost more than her annual salary, and immediately felt like she'd made a terrible mistake. What was she doing here? Nathan Parker moved in circles so far above elementary school teachers that they might as well exist in different atmospheres. She should leave, turn the car around and pretend she'd never found the note. But then she saw movement behind one of the massive windows. A small figure in pink pajamas, standing and looking out. Lily, or Grace, or Sophie. At this distance, she couldn't tell which triplet it was, but she could see the child's face pressed against the glass, watching, waiting, hoping. Emily turned off the engine. The doorbell chimed with expensive resonance, echoing somewhere deep inside the house. Emily counted her heartbeats, 12, 13, 14, before she heard footsteps approaching. The woman who opened the door was in her 50s, wearing slacks and a cardigan, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun. Mrs. Chen, the nanny. "May I help you?" Her expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes did a quick assessment. Not wealthy, not selling anything, not quite sure what to make of. "I'm Emily Bennett, the girls' teacher. I was hoping to speak with Mr. Parker for a moment." Mrs. Chen's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe concern. "Does he know you're coming?" "No, The girls left me a note and I thought..." Emily trailed off, realizing how flimsy this sounded out loud. "Miss Bennett! Miss Bennett!" 3 voices shrieked in unison, and suddenly the entrance hall erupted with 6-year-olds in matching pajamas, their faces bright with an excitement Emily hadn't seen at school. "Girls, quietly," Mrs. Chen said, but without much force. "You came." Lily grabbed Emily's hand. "We didn't think you'd really come." "Did you get our note?" Grace bounced on her toes. Sophie just beamed, her whole face transformed by a smile that made Emily's eyes sting with unexpected tears. "I got your note," Emily confirmed, crouching down to their level. "But sweethearts, you should have asked your dad first before inviting me." "Asked me what?" The voice came from the hallway behind Mrs. Chen, deep, tired, with an edge that suggested he'd been interrupted from something important. Nathan Parker emerged from the shadows, and Emily's breath caught. He looked nothing like the man from the parent meeting. That Nathan had worn a $1,000 suit and carried an aura of untouchable success. This Nathan wore faded jeans and a wrinkled dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His dark hair stuck up like he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes, gray like a winter sky before snow, fixed on Emily with an expression somewhere between confusion and irritation. "Daddy, it's Miss Bennett," Lily announced, still clutching Emily's hand. "I can see that." He crossed his arms over his chest. "What I can't see is why she's here." The girls' excited chatter died immediately. Emily watched them shrink back, the brightness draining from their faces like someone had turned off a light. Sophie stepped closer to her sisters, and Grace's bottom lip trembled. Emily stood slowly, squaring her shoulders. "Mr. Parker, I apologize for dropping by unannounced. Your daughters left me a note and I wanted to..." "Mrs. Chen handles communications with the school. If there's a problem with the girls, you can email her." His tone was clipped, efficient, designed to end conversations. "There's no problem. The girls are wonderful students. This is personal." Something shifted in his expression. Personal. "They wrote me a note asking me to visit. They said..." Emily glanced at the girls who were watching with wide eyes. "They said you might enjoy some company." Nathan's jaw tightened. The muscle Emily had noticed at the concert was back, working overtime. "My daughters are 6. They don't get to make social arrangements without permission." "Daddy, we just wanted..." Lily started. "Upstairs. Now. All 3 of you." The girls fled without another word, their footsteps thundering up the grand staircase. Emily watched them go, her heart breaking at how quickly their joy had turned to fear. When she turned back to Nathan, she found him staring at her, with an expression she couldn't quite read. Anger, yes, but underneath it, something else. Something that looked a lot like panic. "I should go." Emily said quietly. "I'm sorry for intruding." She turned toward the door, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." Emily looked back. Nathan had his hand pressed against his forehead, eyes closed, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words sounded like they cost him something vital. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way, or sent the girls away like that. You're their father. You have every right, do I?" He dropped his hand and looked at her directly for the first time, and Emily felt the impact of that gaze like a physical thing. Because most days I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. Most days I feel like they'd be better off with anyone else. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Mrs. Chen had disappeared, leaving them alone in the cavernous entryway. Through the windows, Emily could see Christmas lights on the houses across the street, twinkling cheerfully in the growing darkness. "Your house doesn't have Christmas lights," she observed. Nathan blinked at the apparent non sequitur. "What?" "Sophie asked me yesterday if my family has Christmas. She said she didn't think you knew how to do Christmas anymore." Something in Nathan's expression crumbled. He turned away, gripping the back of a nearby chair like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Their mother loved Christmas. She'd start decorating the day after Thanksgiving. The whole house would smell like cinnamon and pine and sugar cookies. She'd make hot chocolate from scratch, and we'd all sit by the fire, and she'd read them, the night before Christmas, every single night in December. His voice cracked on the last word. Last Christmas she was pregnant. So happy. Planning for the baby's first Christmas together. She had this whole vision. He stopped, shook his head. And then January came and something went wrong and suddenly she was just gone. The doctors said it was a complication from the delivery, something about an embolism. I don't remember the details because I couldn't hear anything over the sound of my entire world ending. Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks but made no move to wipe them away. "So no," Nathan continued, his voice barely above a whisper now. "I don't know how to do Christmas anymore. I don't know how to do any of this anymore." In the silence that followed, Emily made a decision. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it would end badly. But she'd spent 2 years living in a house that had become a mausoleum to her own grief, and she recognized the same desolation in this beautiful empty mansion. "Then maybe," she said softly, "it's time someone showed you." Nathan turned to look at her, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Emily saw something other than anger or exhaustion in his eyes. She saw hope. "Stay for dinner." The words came out before Nathan could stop them, surprising him as much as they clearly surprised Emily. She stood there in his entryway, hand still on the doorknob, eyes wide with uncertainty. Mr. Parker, I don't think, Nathan, please." He ran a hand through his hair again, that nervous gesture he couldn't seem to stop. "And I'm asking because the girls haven't looked that happy in months, and I just sent them upstairs like they'd done something wrong when all they did was care about their father." His voice cracked. "I owe them better than that." Emily's hand fell away from the door. "They miss their mother. Every single day." Nathan looked up at the staircase where his daughters had disappeared. "Grace still sets a place for her at breakfast sometimes. Lily talks to her at night, tells her about school. And Sophie," he swallowed hard, "Sophie asked me last week if heaven has visiting hours." The sound that escaped Emily's throat was half sob, half laugh. Oh, Nathan. It was the first time she'd used his first name, and something about hearing it in her voice, gentle, understanding, without pity, made his chest ache in a way that was almost relief. "Stay," he said again. "Please, let me try to fix what I broke 5 minutes ago." Emily nodded. "Okay, but only if you let me help cook." "Mrs. Chen usually." "I know, but tonight let's do something different." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Besides, I make excellent spaghetti, and something tells me your kitchen could use some chaos." Nathan found himself smiling back, a rusty feeling after so many months. "I'll go get the girls." He climbed the stairs, each step feeling lighter. At the top, he found all 3 daughters pressed against their bedroom door, clearly trying to hear what was happening below. Girls. 3 blonde heads whipped around, eyes wide with worry. Lily's lower lip was trembling. Grace had tears on her cheeks. Sophie just looked terrified. Nathan knelt down and opened his arms. "Come here." They hesitated for only a second before launching themselves at him, a tangle of small arms and strawberry-scented hair and muffled sobs against his shirt. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. You did something beautiful today and I made you feel bad about it. That was wrong. We just wanted you to have a friend," Lily hiccuped. "Like we have friends at school." "You're always alone, Daddy," Grace added. "Even when we're with you." Nathan's eyes burned. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds came the truth he'd been avoiding. He was alone. He'd surrounded himself with walls so high that even his own daughters couldn't reach him anymore. "You're right," he admitted, "and I'm going to try to do better. Starting right now." Sophie pulled back to look at his face. "Is Miss Bennet still here?" "She is, and she's going to help us make dinner. All of us. Together." The transformation was instantaneous. Tears vanished. Faces lit up like Christmas morning. They scrambled out of his arms and thundered back down the stairs, shouting for Miss Bennet. Nathan followed more slowly, pausing at the top of the stairs to press his palm against his chest, where his heart was doing something it hadn't done in so long. It was hope. In the kitchen, Emily had somehow convinced Mrs. Chen to take the evening off and had taken command of the vast, underused kitchen like a general organizing troops. "Lily, you're in charge of breaking spaghetti into the pot. Grace, you get to tear up lettuce for salad. Sophie, you're my official taste tester." Emily tied an apron around her waist, then noticed Nathan in the doorway. "And you're on sauce duty." The girls giggled. Actually giggled. Nathan couldn't remember the last time he'd heard that sound in this house. For the next hour, Nathan's sterile kitchen transformed into something he'd never expected. A home. Emily showed Grace how to tear lettuce, so the leaves don't bruise, demonstrating with gentle hands. She guided Lily's hands as they broke spaghetti into the pot, counting together. 1, 2, 3, snap, each piece making a satisfying crack. She let Sophie taste test 3 times, solemnly nodding at each verdict of needs more salt or perfect now. And she talked. Not the careful, measured words of someone walking on eggshells, but real conversation. She told stories about her own childhood, about her mother's disastrous cooking experiments that somehow always ended with laughter instead of tears, about the time her father tried to make Thanksgiving dinner and nearly set the kitchen on fire trying to deep fry a turkey in the garage. "What happened?" Lily asked. "Well, my mom banned him from the kitchen for 6 months. And my dad started a tradition where every Thanksgiving we order Chinese food." The girls found this hilarious. Nathan found himself leaning against the counter, just watching his daughters come alive, watching a stranger bring light back into rooms that had been dark for so long. "What about your husband?" Sophie asked suddenly. "Does he like Chinese Thanksgiving?" Emily's hands stilled for just a moment. Nathan saw the flicker of pain cross her face before she smoothed it away. "I don't have a husband anymore, sweetie. He had an accident a couple years ago." The kitchen fell silent except for the bubbling of pasta water. "Like our mommy," Grace said softly. "Yes," Emily agreed. "Like your mommy. Do you miss him?" Lily asked. "Every day. Does it stop hurting?" Sophie's whisper was almost too quiet to hear. Emily set down the spoon and turned to face the girls fully. Nathan watched her crouch down so she was at their eye level, saw her hands gently take theirs. "No, honey. It doesn't stop hurting. But it changes. The hurt becomes part of you, like a stone in your pocket. You carry it with you, but after a while you get used to the weight. And some days, you can even forget it's there for a little while." Nathan's vision blurred. He turned away, pretending to focus on the sauce. "Daddy has a stone too," Lily observed. "I think he has a really big one," Grace added. "Maybe Miss Bennet can help make it smaller," Sophie suggested. Emily's laugh was watery. "Maybe we can help each other." Dinner was loud in ways Nathan hadn't experienced since before Sarah died. The girls chattered non-stop, talking over each other in their excitement, telling Emily stories about school, about their friends, about the stuffed animals that lived on their beds and had elaborate backstories. Lily was convinced the cat next door was actually a princess under a spell. "She has a very royal way of walking," Lily insisted seriously, demonstrating with her fork held high like a scepter. "All cats have a royal way of walking," Emily replied just as seriously, matching Lily's solemn tone. "It's one of their main characteristics. Right up there with being excellent judges of character and always landing on their feet. Grace nearly choked on her spaghetti laughing. Sophie joined in, and soon all three girls were giggling so hard they could barely eat. Nathan mostly listened, occasionally meeting Emily's eyes across the table and finding something there that made his breath catch. Understanding. Recognition. The silent communication of two people who'd walked through darkness and somehow found each other on the other side. After dinner, as Emily helped the girls brush their teeth, Nathan stood in the hallway outside their bathroom, listening. "Miss Bennett, do you have kids?" Grace asked through a mouthful of toothpaste. "No, sweetie. My husband and I were going to have children, but then—" "The accident," Lily finished. "Yes. You can borrow us," Sophie offered. "We have extra love since Mommy left." Nathan had to press his hand against the wall to steady himself. Extra love. His 6-year-old daughter believed she had extra love to spare. He heard Emily's voice break. "That's the sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me." "So you'll come back?" Lily pressed. "If your daddy says it's okay." "Please, Daddy!" 3 voices called in unison, clearly knowing he was listening. Nathan stepped into the doorway. 3 hopeful faces and 1 questioning one turned toward him. "I think that could be arranged," he managed. The bedtime routine that followed was something Nathan had been failing at for months. Tonight, the girls went to bed without a single protest, each clutching their stuffed animals and smiling. "Will you read us a story?" Lily asked Emily. Emily glanced at Nathan, who nodded. She settled on the edge of Lily's bed and picked up a book from the nightstand. "The Night Before Christmas," she read, and Nathan's heart stopped. "That was Mommy's favorite," Grace whispered. "I know," Emily said softly. "Your daddy told me. Is it okay if I read it?" 3 heads nodded solemnly. Nathan leaned against the doorframe and listened as Emily read about Christmas Eve and reindeer and magic. Watched as his daughter's eyes grew heavy. Felt something in his chest crack open and start to bleed in a way that was painful, but necessary. By the time Emily reached "Happy Christmas to all," and "To all a good night," all 3 girls were asleep. She set the book down carefully and stood, tiptoeing toward the door. In the hallway, she finally let the tears fall. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have." "You should have." Nathan's voice was rough. "That book has been sitting there for a year. I couldn't touch it, couldn't even look at it. But watching you read it to them—" He stopped. It was like Sarah was in the room just for a moment, like she was saying it's okay to move forward. Emily wiped her eyes. "They're amazing girls, Nathan. They deserve better than what I've been giving them. They deserve the father they have, when he's not buried under grief." She looked up at him. "We all deserve to climb out from under it eventually. I don't know how," he admitted. "Neither do I." She smiled through her tears. "But maybe we can figure it out together." They stood there in the hallway for a long moment, 2 broken people recognizing their reflection in each other. Then Emily glanced at her watch and gasped. "It's almost 9. I should go." Nathan walked her to the door, suddenly reluctant to let her leave. The house would be dark and empty again once she was gone. The silence would rush back in like water filling a boat, and he wasn't sure he was ready for that anymore. Not after tonight. Not after seeing what his home could be with life in it. "Thank you," he said, his voice catching slightly. "For coming. For staying. For being exactly what we needed, even though you were a complete stranger this afternoon." "Thank you for letting me," she replied, her eyes bright in the porch light. "This was the first time in 2 years I've felt like myself again. Like I could be around a family and not feel like I was intruding on someone else's life." She started down the steps, then turned back. "Nathan, tomorrow's Saturday. If you want, we could go get a Christmas tree. Start some new traditions, maybe." Nathan thought about the empty living room. About last Christmas, when he'd forbidden any decorations. About this Christmas, which he'd been dreading for months. "The girls would love that," he said. "And you?" Her voice was gentle. "Would you love that?" He thought about it honestly. "I think I might." Emily's smile was like sunrise. "Then it's a date. I'll pick you all up at 10. "Emily," she paused. "Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to start living again. Thank you for reminding me of the same thing." She drove away, and Nathan stood on his doorstep, watching until her taillights disappeared. The night was cold, clear, perfect for Christmas, which was still 2 weeks away. Above him, stars glittered. Sarah had loved the stars. "I think you'd like her," He whispered to the sky. "I think you'd want this for them. For me." A breeze stirred, carrying the scent of pine from the neighbors' Christmas trees. Nathan smiled, genuinely smiled, and went back inside to a house that didn't feel quite so empty anymore. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crystal-clear December sky that made everything look sharper, brighter, more real. Nathan woke to the sound of whispered voices outside his bedroom door, the girls trying and failing to be quiet. "Is it 7 yet?" Sophie's whisper carried clearly through the wood. "Almost," Grace replied. "The big hand is on the 11. "That's not 7, that's 6:55, Lily corrected with 6-year-old superiority. "We have to wait 5 more minutes." Nathan smiled into his pillow. For the first time in a year, he'd actually slept through the night without waking at 3 in the morning, staring at the empty side of the bed and wondering how to keep breathing through another day. He'd dreamed, and the dreams hadn't been the nightmares that usually haunted him. Visions of hospital rooms, and the moment everything shattered. He checked his phone. 6:57. Close enough. "You can come in," he called out. The door burst open, and 3 blonde tornadoes descended on his bed, bouncing and giggling and talking over each other. "Miss Bennett is coming today. We're getting a Christmas tree. Can we get a really big one? Mommy always wanted a big one that touched the ceiling." Nathan felt the familiar tightness in his chest at the mention of Sarah. But this time it didn't crush him. This time he could breathe through it. "Your mom did love the big trees," he agreed, pulling them all close, breathing in the strawberry scent of their shampoo. "Remember the year we got one so tall Dad had to cut off the top to make it fit? And the top branches were all crooked." Grace laughed, her eyes bright with the memory. "And Mommy said it gave the tree character," Lily added, nodding seriously, as if this were the most important wisdom ever imparted. Sophie was quieter, her small face thoughtful in that way she had when trying to hold on to something slipping away. "I don't remember that one very well." Of course she didn't. She'd been 4. Nathan's heart ached at how much of their mother they were already forgetting, how memories were becoming stories told by other people instead of experiences they could touch. "Well," he said, keeping his voice steady even though his throat was tight, "maybe this year we'll make some new memories, ones you'll all remember clearly." They spent the next 2 hours in a flurry of activity. Nathan made pancakes, only slightly burned, while the girls picked out their outfits. There was a debate about snow boots versus regular shoes. Lily insisted on wearing her princess crown, because Miss Bennett should know we're royalty. Grace countered that they should look normal. "So Miss Bennett doesn't think we're weird." Sophie solved the argument by declaring they should each dress how they wanted. The result? Lily in full princess regalia, Grace in practical jeans and sweater, Sophie in a tutu over leggings. Nathan looked at his mismatched daughters and felt love so fierce it almost hurt. At exactly 10 o'clock, Emily's Honda pulled into the driveway. The girls shrieked and raced to the door. Nathan followed more slowly, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first date with Sarah. Emily stepped out wearing jeans, boots, and a red puffer jacket that made her look younger. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she was smiling that smile that seemed to light up everything around her. "Ready for an adventure?" she called out. The girls screamed their affirmation and piled into her car. She'd brought booster seats, Nathan noticed. Already prepared, already thinking ahead. The drive to Miller's tree farm took 20 minutes, filled with the girls singing Christmas carols off-key and Emily joining in with equal enthusiasm. Nathan found himself humming along. Miller's farm was everything a Christmas tree farm should be. Rolling hills covered in pine trees. A red barn decorated with wreaths. The smell of wood smoke and hot cider in the air. Families wandered between rows of trees, children running and laughing. It looked like a place where healing happened. "Mr. Parker!" A weathered man in his 60s approached them, his face creasing with genuine pleasure. "Haven't seen you here in a couple years. These your girls?" Nathan froze. He'd been coming to Miller's farm since moving to Connecticut. The last time was 2 years ago, with Sarah, when she'd been 7 months pregnant. They'd picked out the biggest tree on the lot. Emily's hand touched his arm, just briefly, grounding him. "We're here for the perfect tree," she said to Mr. Miller. "Something special." The old man's eyes moved between Emily and Nathan, understanding flickering. "Well then, let's find you something special." "Girls, you want to help me look?" The triplets took off with Mr. Miller. Nathan stood there, unable to move, memories crashing over him like waves. "It's okay to feel sad and happy at the same time," Emily said quietly. "That's what grief looks like when it starts to heal. It doesn't mean you're forgetting her." "How do you know?" The words came out rough. "Because I feel it too. Every time I do something Michael and I used to do together. Every time I laugh and then feel guilty for laughing." She looked at him. "But I'm learning that love doesn't end just because someone dies. It changes shape. It makes room for new things without erasing what was." Nathan swallowed hard. "I'm terrified of forgetting her face, the sound of her voice. So write it down. Record yourself talking about her. Tell the girls stories. Keep her alive in the ways that matter." Emily gestured toward where the girls had disappeared. "They need to know their mother wasn't just someone who died. She was someone who lived, someone who loved them, someone who would want them to have a Christmas tree." "You're very wise for someone who's also still grieving," Nathan said, attempting a small smile. "I'm a teacher. We're professionally wise." She bumped his shoulder gently. "Come on, let's go find that perfect tree." They found the girls deep in the lot, standing in front of a massive Douglas fir that had to be at least 12 feet tall. "This one," Lily declared. "It's perfect." "It's taller than our house," Nathan pointed out. "Then we'll make the house taller," Sophie said with perfect 6-year-old logic. Grace was more practical. "Dad, can we really get this one? It's really, really big." Nathan looked at the tree, looked at his daughter's hopeful faces, looked at Emily, who was watching him with gentle encouragement. "We can get this one," he said, "but we might need to cut the top off like we did with Mommy's tree." "The one with character," Grace remembered. "That's the one." Mr. Miller helped them cut down the tree, a process that involved much sawing, laughter when the tree fell in the wrong direction, and Sophie insisting on helping, even though she mostly got in the way. They loaded it onto Nathan's SUV, the top sticking out several feet past the bumper. "This is the best tree ever," Lily proclaimed. "Better than any tree in the whole world," Grace agreed. Sophie was quieter, looking out the window. Then she said, so softly Nathan almost missed it, "Mommy would have liked this tree." The car went silent. Nathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, he saw Emily reach over and take Sophie's small hand. "I bet she would have," Emily said gently. "Tell me about your mommy. What did she like about Christmas trees?" And Sophie did. They all did. For the rest of the drive home, the girls talked about their mother, about how she insisted on putting the star on top herself, climbing up a ladder while Dad held it steady, about how she made them special ornaments every year with their pictures, about how she sang carols all through December. Nathan drove and listened and cried silently behind his sunglasses, tears streaming down his face while his daughters remembered their mother out loud, no longer treating her memory like something fragile that would break if touched. Back at the house, getting the tree inside became a production. It took all 4 of them to maneuver it through the door. They had to turn it sideways, tilt it diagonally, and eventually Nathan had to climb a ladder and cut off 6 inches from the top. "There," Emily said, as they finally got it into the stand, needles everywhere, everyone slightly sweaty despite the cold. "Perfect." It wasn't perfect. It leaned slightly to the left. The top was now flat where Nathan had sawed it off. There were bare patches on one side. It was the most beautiful tree Nathan had ever seen. "Now decorations," Lily declared. "Tomorrow," Nathan said, and surprised himself. He'd been dreading the return to normal, the end of the magical time with Emily. But instead of dreading it ending, he was already planning the next moment. "Emily, would you come back tomorrow? Help us decorate?" "Please," 3 voices chorused. Emily smiled. "I'd love to, but on one condition." "What?" they all asked. "Tonight you 3 make ornaments to put on the tree. Something special, something that's just from you." The girls immediately started planning their ornaments, running upstairs to gather craft supplies. Mrs. Chen materialized from wherever she'd been hiding, took one look at the pine needles covering the floor, sighed dramatically, and went to get the vacuum. Nathan walked Emily to her car, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the driveway. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for knowing what to say to Sophie, for helping them talk about Sarah, for just being here. Thank you for letting me be here." Emily paused, her hand on her car door. "Nathan, Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you stop celebrating Christmas? I understand grief, believe me. But this feels like more than that. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ground. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Because the last Christmas with Sarah, we were so happy, so full of plans and hope and joy. And then 6 weeks later, she was gone. And I couldn't. He stopped, struggling. I couldn't bear to celebrate the same holiday that had made us so happy right before it all fell apart. It felt like a betrayal, like I was tempting fate by being happy again. Oh, Nathan. Emily's eyes were bright with tears. That's not how life works. Bad things don't happen because we were happy first. And being happy again doesn't mean you didn't love her enough. Logically, I know that. But my heart hasn't caught up to my logic yet. Then maybe, Emily said softly, it's time to help your heart heal, one Christmas tree at a time. She drove away, and Nathan stood watching until her car disappeared. But this time, instead of going back to an empty house, he went back to a house full of pine needles and laughter and little girls making ornaments at the kitchen table. That night, after the girls were asleep, Nathan went downstairs and stood in front of the tree. In the darkness, with only the streetlights outside providing illumination, it looked almost magical. He reached out and touched one of the branches, feeling the needles prick his palm. I think I'm ready to start living again, he whispered to Sarah's memory. I think the girls need me too. And I think maybe I need it too. The house was silent, but it didn't feel empty anymore. For the first time in a year, Nathan went to bed believing that maybe, just maybe, everything would eventually be okay. Sunday morning, Emily arrived at 10 with boxes of ornaments from her own collection and a thermos of homemade hot chocolate that filled the house with the scent of cinnamon and vanilla the moment she opened it. I couldn't sleep last night, she confessed, as Nathan took her coat, their fingers brushing for just a moment, long enough for his heart to skip. I kept thinking about ornaments, about which ones would be perfect for the girls. You didn't have to do that, Nathan said, but he was smiling. Actually smiling on a Sunday morning, something he hadn't done in over a year. I wanted to. Emily's eyes met his, and there was something in her expression that made his breath catch. Not pity, not sympathy, just warmth, understanding, connection. Besides, I have way too many ornaments for one person. Michael and I collected them everywhere we traveled. It feels good to share them with people who will appreciate them. The girls thundered down the stairs, each clutching the ornaments they'd made the night before. Lily had created a glittery snowflake that shed sparkles with every movement. Grace had carefully constructed a paper chain in red and green, each link labeled with something she was grateful for. Daddy, Miss Bennett, our new tree, Mommy in heaven. Sophie had painted a small wooden star with a family portrait. 4 figures, one with angel wings hovering above the others. Nathan's throat tightened when he saw Sophie's ornament. That's beautiful, sweetie, Emily said, kneeling down to look at it more closely. Is that your whole family? Sophie nodded solemnly. Mommy watches us from heaven. That's what Daddy says. So I put her in the sky part. I think your mommy would love that, Emily said softly, and Nathan saw her blink away tears. She's still part of your family. She always will be. Even though you're here now? Lily asked, with the blunt curiosity of 6-year-olds. The question hung in the air. Nathan felt his face flush, suddenly aware of what his daughters were implying, what they were hoping for. It was too soon, too fast, too complicated. But Emily just smiled gently. Your mommy has a special place in your hearts that no one else can ever fill. I'm not here to replace her. I'm just here to be your friend, and your daddy's friend. Is that okay? 3 heads nodded with visible relief, and Nathan felt something in his chest unclench. They spent the next hour decorating the tree, and it was nothing like the perfect, coordinated decorating sessions Sarah had orchestrated. This was chaos. Beautiful, messy, perfect chaos. Ornaments clustered in groups where small hands could reach. Tinsel thrown with more enthusiasm than accuracy. The girls arguing good-naturedly about whether the angel or the star should go on top. Mommy always wanted the angel, Grace insisted. But we don't have Mommy's angel anymore, Lily pointed out. Daddy packed it away after she died. Nathan froze, one hand reaching for a box of lights. He had packed away Sarah's angel, the delicate porcelain one she'd inherited from her grandmother. He couldn't bear to look at it last Christmas. Couldn't bear to put it on a tree they weren't celebrating. He'd put it in the attic with all the other Christmas decorations, boxing up the holiday, along with his grief. "I can get it," he heard himself say, "if you girls want to use it." 3 faces turned to him, eyes wide with hope and uncertainty. "Really, Daddy?" Sophie whispered. "Really? Give me 5 minutes." The attic was cold and dusty, filled with boxes Nathan hadn't opened in a year. He found the Christmas decorations in the back corner, labeled in Sarah's neat handwriting: tree ornaments, outdoor lights, nativity scene. His hands shook as he opened the box marked "Special Ornaments, Handle with Care." There it was, the angel, porcelain and delicate, with gossamer wings and a serene expression. Sarah had loved this angel. Her grandmother had given it to her when Sarah was 10 years old, making her promise to put it on her own Christmas tree someday. "I'm trying," Nathan whispered to the angel, to Sarah's memory, to the empty attic. "I'm trying to let them have Christmas again. I hope that's what you'd want." He carried the box downstairs carefully, like he was carrying something sacred. Maybe he was. When he entered the living room, the girls were showing Emily their mother's ornaments, the ones Nathan hadn't packed away because they were in the girls' rooms. Handmade decorations Sarah had crafted when she was pregnant. Each one unique, each one a love letter to the daughters she couldn't wait to meet. "This one says Lily in glitter," Lily was explaining, holding up a red ball covered in silver sparkles. "And mine has my footprint from when I was a baby," Grace added, showing off an ornament with a tiny footprint preserved in clay. "Mommy made these before we were born," Sophie said quietly. "She loved us before she even met us." Emily's eyes were bright with tears. "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Nathan set down the box and carefully lifted out the angel. "Girls, I found her." The room went silent. 3 little girls stared at the angel, like they were seeing a piece of their mother come back to life. "Can I hold her?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Nathan knelt down, holding the angel out carefully. "We all can. Together." They gathered around the angel, Nathan, his 3 daughters, and Emily, who hung back slightly, giving them space for this family moment. But Sophie reached out and grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her into the circle. "You're part of this too," Sophie said simply. And Emily, who'd lost her own chance at children when Michael died, who'd spent 2 years teaching other people's kids and going home to an empty house, broke down crying right there in Nathan's living room. "I'm sorry," she gasped, trying to pull herself together. "I'm so sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me." "Nothing's wrong with you," Nathan said firmly, moving closer, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. "You're allowed to feel things. You're allowed to be part of this." The girls, with the emotional intelligence of children who'd learned too young about loss, gathered around Emily in a group hug that was more tackle than embrace. "Don't cry, Miss Bennett," Lily said, patting her arm. "We love you," Grace added matter-of-factly. "You make Daddy smile again," Sophie observed with brutal 6-year-old honesty. Emily laughed through her tears, hugging all 3 girls at once. "You 3 are the sweetest things in the entire world." "We know," Lily said with zero modesty, making everyone laugh. Nathan helped Emily up, his hand lingering on her arm perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. An understanding, an acknowledgement of what was growing between them, even though neither was quite ready to name it. "Should we put the angel on top?" Nathan asked, breaking the moment, but not the connection. He lifted Lily up first. She was the oldest by 4 minutes and never let her sisters forget it. She placed the angel carefully on the highest branch she could reach. Then Nathan lifted Grace, who adjusted the angel's position slightly. Finally, Sophie, who pressed a kiss to her fingers and touched the angel's porcelain face. "For Mommy," she whispered. Nathan set Sophie down and stepped back to look at the tree. It was magnificent in its imperfection. Lights were unevenly distributed. Ornaments clustered in some areas and were sparse in others. The angel tilted slightly to the left. Tinsel hung in clumps. It was the most beautiful Christmas tree he'd ever seen. "I think we need a picture," Emily said, pulling out her phone. "No, wait." Nathan started to protest, but the girls were already posing in front of the tree, pulling him and Emily into the frame. Emily held her phone at arm's length, adjusting the angle to capture all of them. "Everyone say Christmas! Christmas!" they all shouted. and Emily snapped the photo. Later, Nathan would look at that picture and see the moment his life began again. 5 people in front of a lopsided Christmas tree, smiling like they meant it. 3 little girls in the front, their faces bright with joy. And in the back, 2 adults with grief-worn eyes starting to remember what happiness looked like. But in the moment, he just felt grateful. They spent the afternoon in the kind of comfortable domesticity Nathan had forgotten existed. Emily taught the girls how to make paper snowflakes, creating a blizzard of white paper that covered the living room floor. They made sandwiches for lunch, peanut butter and jelly, cut into Christmas tree shapes with a cookie cutter Emily had brought. They watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The girls cuddled between Nathan and Emily on the couch, warm and content. At one point, Sophie fell asleep with her head on Emily's lap. Emily absently stroked her hair, and Nathan watched, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. "You're good with them," he said quietly. Emily smiled without taking her eyes off Sophie's sleeping face. "They're easy to love." "So are you," Nathan said, and then immediately flushed. "I mean, that is, you're easy to be around, easy to talk to. The girls love you, obviously. That's what I meant." Emily's smile widened, though she was kind enough not to comment on his stammering. "I know what you meant." As the afternoon faded into evening, Nathan realized he didn't want Emily to leave, didn't want this perfect day to end, didn't want to go back to the quiet house with just him and the girls and the ghost of his wife. But Emily stood, gathering her coat, saying she should get home. The girls protested, begging her to stay for dinner, for bedtime stories, forever. "I'll be back soon," Emily promised, hugging each girl goodbye. "I promise." Nathan walked her to the door again. It was becoming their ritual, these moments alone at the threshold between his world and hers. "Thank you," he said, "for today, for yesterday, for everything, Nathan." Emily turned to face him fully, her expression serious. "I need to tell you something." His heart dropped. Here it came. She was going to say this was too much, too fast, too complicated. She was going to say she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't handle getting attached to his daughters, couldn't risk her own heart. "I haven't felt this alive in 2 years, Emily said instead. "Being here with you and the girls. It's like I can finally breathe again. And that scares me because I don't know what we're doing here. I don't know what this is, but I don't want to stop." Nathan felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "I don't want to stop either." They stood there in the doorway, looking at each other, the December cold seeping in around them. Nathan could hear the girls upstairs, getting ready for bed with Mrs. Chen. He could smell the pine from the tree. He could feel his heart beating too fast in his chest. "This is probably crazy," Emily said softly. 2 widowed people, both still grieving, trying to figure out what comes next. "Probably," Nathan agreed. "But maybe that's exactly why it works. Maybe we understand each other in ways other people can't." Emily nodded slowly. "Maybe we do." She left, and Nathan closed the door, leaning against it for a long moment. Upstairs, he heard the girls calling for him. "Daddy, come read us a story." And he smiled. For the first time since Sarah died, Nathan felt like he was allowed to have this, allowed to feel happy, allowed to imagine a future that held more than just grief and survival. That night, after the girls were asleep, Nathan sat in the living room with just the Christmas tree lights on. He pulled out his phone and looked at the picture Emily had taken, all of them together, smiling, looking like a family. He texted it to Emily. "Thank you for today, for everything, for reminding us how to be happy again." Her response came a minute later. "Thank you for letting me be part of it. Sleep well, Nathan." And then, after another minute, "The girls aren't the only ones easy to love, by the way." Nathan stared at his phone, his heart racing. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "Good to know." It was careful, safe, not committing to anything. But as he went to bed that night, for the first time in a year, Nathan fell asleep thinking about the future, instead of mourning the past. The week before Christmas passed in a blur of school activities and evenings spent at Nathan's house that felt increasingly like home to Emily. She'd started keeping a toothbrush in the guest bathroom. The girls had designated a spot on the couch as Miss Bennett's corner. Nathan had memorized how she took her coffee. 2 sugars, splash of cream. They were building something. Emily just wasn't sure what to call it yet. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow that transformed Connecticut into a winter wonderland. Emily had promised the girls she'd spend Christmas Eve with them, helping make cookies, reading stories, staying for Christmas Eve dinner. But that morning, as she drove toward the Parker house, Emily's phone rang. Her mother. "Honey, your father's in the hospital." Emily's hands tightened on the steering wheel, her heart dropping into her stomach. "What happened?" "Mom, what happened?" "He fell off a ladder hanging outdoor lights. Broke his leg in 2 places. They're keeping him overnight. I'm here alone, and I really need you, sweetie." Emily pulled over, her mind racing. Her parents lived 3 hours away. But the girls, Nathan, she'd promised. "Mom, I'm coming. I'll be there as soon as I can." She called Nathan, her voice shaking as she explained. "Go," he said immediately. "Emily, of course you need to go. But I promised the girls. They're going to be so disappointed. They'll understand. We'll explain that sometimes grown-ups have emergencies. I don't want to let them down." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "You're not. You're showing them what it means to be there for family. That's never letting anyone down." Emily wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just drive safe, and let me know how your dad is." At Nathan's house, the disappointment was palpable. "But she promised," Lily said, her lower lip trembling. "I know, sweetheart. But Miss Bennett's daddy got hurt. She needs to take care of him, just like you'd want her to take care of you if you got hurt." "Is he going to die?" Sophie asked in a small voice. Nathan pulled her close. "No, baby. He broke his leg. He's going to be fine. But Miss Bennett needs to be with him right now." Grace stood by the window looking out at the snow. Christmas isn't the same without her. Nathan felt his chest tighten. Christmas wasn't the same without Emily. She'd been here less than 2 weeks, but somehow she'd become essential to their happiness. And that terrified him. What if she decided this was too much? What if she realized she deserved better than a ready-made family and a complicated widower? That night, Nathan went through the motions of Christmas Eve. They made cookies, but they weren't as fun without Emily. They watched Christmas movies, but the couch felt too big. They read The Night Before Christmas, but Nathan's voice caught on every page. The girls went to bed quieter than usual, and Nathan sat alone in the living room, staring at the Christmas tree and feeling the old darkness creeping back in. His phone buzzed. "Emily, Dad's okay. Surgery went well. How are the girls?" Nathan typed back. "They're okay. Missing you. How are you holding up?" "Tired, worried, guilty." "Don't feel guilty. You're exactly where you need to be." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I wish I could be there with you." Nathan stared at those words. He typed and deleted several responses before settling on, "We wish you were here too." Emily's response came quickly. "Tell the girls I'm sorry. They understand. And Emily, you don't have anything to make up for. Thank you. Merry Christmas Eve, Nathan." Merry Christmas Eve. Nathan stood up, walking to the tree. The angel on top looked down at him with her serene face. "I don't know what I'm doing, Sarah," he whispered. "I think I'm falling in love with her. And I feel guilty because how can I love someone else when I still love you?" The house was silent. "She makes the girls happy. She makes me happy. But I'm terrified. What if I mess this up? What if I lose her too?" Nathan sank onto the couch, putting his head in his hands. For so long, grief had been his constant companion. It had defined him, shaped him, given him an identity. But Emily had shown him something different. She'd shown him that grief didn't have to be his whole story, that love wasn't a finite resource that ran out when someone died. Upstairs, he heard footsteps. Sophie appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy? Why are you crying?" Nathan hadn't realized he was. "Just thinking about Mommy." Sophie climbed onto the couch next to him. "Do you miss Miss Bennett?" "Yeah, sweetheart, I do." "Do you love her?" Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds came the questions adults were too afraid to ask. Nathan looked down at his youngest daughter, at her serious little face waiting for an answer, and decided she deserved honesty. "I think I might," he admitted, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "Like you loved Mommy?" "No, different. Mommy was my first love, my great love, the mother of my children. Nothing will ever change that." Nathan stroked Sophie's hair, feeling its softness between his fingers. But Miss Bennet, Emily, she's teaching me that I can love again, that it's okay to be happy again. That doesn't mean I love Mommy any less. Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing this with the gravity of someone much older. Is there enough room in your heart for both? Yes, Nathan said, and realized as he said it that it was absolutely true. Yes, there's enough room for both. The heart's funny that way. It just keeps growing to fit all the love you need it to hold. Then I think it's okay to love Miss Bennet, Sophie announced with 6-year-old certainty, as if she'd just solved one of life's great mysteries. Mommy would want you to be happy. Nathan felt tears streaming down his face again, but this time they didn't feel like grief. They felt like release, like permission he'd been waiting for from someone who couldn't give it, but maybe didn't need to, because it had been his to give himself all along. Sophie yawned. Can we call Miss Bennet? I want to tell her Merry Christmas. Nathan checked his watch. Almost 11. It's pretty late, honey. Please. Nathan dialed. Emily answered on the second ring. Nathan, is everything okay? Someone wants to talk to you. He handed the phone to Sophie, who immediately launched into a story about the cookies they'd made and how hers had turned out shaped like a dinosaur instead of a reindeer. Emily's laugh came through the phone, clear and bright. After Sophie said goodnight, Nathan took the phone back. Sorry about the late call. Don't be. That was exactly what I needed. Emily's voice was softer now. Nathan, I've been thinking about us, about what this is. Nathan's heart started racing. And I'm scared. Terrified, actually. But I also know I haven't felt this way about anyone since Michael. And walking away because I'm scared seems more frightening than taking the risk. Emily, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking you to define this or... I love you, Nathan interrupted. The words came out before he could stop them. I love you. And that terrifies me because I never thought I'd love anyone again after Sarah. But I do. I love how you are with my daughters. I love how you make me laugh. I love how you understand grief without trying to fix it. I love you. Silence on the other end. Emily, I love you too, she whispered. God help me, I love you too. Nathan closed his eyes, feeling something shift inside his chest. So what do we do now? Emily asked. I don't know, but I think we figure it out together. Together, Emily repeated. I like the sound of that. They talked for another hour, until Emily's voice started fading with exhaustion. They said goodnight with promises to talk tomorrow. Nathan carried Sophie upstairs and tucked her into bed with her sisters. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching them sleep. Thank you, he whispered to Sarah's memory. Thank you for them. Thank you for the time we had. And thank you for letting me know it's okay to move forward. Christmas morning arrived with the girls bouncing on Nathan's bed at an ungodly hour, shrieking about presents and Santa and snow. Nathan groaned and let them drag him downstairs, where the tree stood surrounded by gifts wrapped in slightly crooked paper. They were halfway through opening presents, wrapping paper scattered everywhere like confetti, when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Nathan said, assuming it was Mrs. Chen coming by with Christmas cookies like she did every year. He opened the door and froze. Emily stood on his doorstep, snowflakes caught in her hair like tiny diamonds, wearing the same red puffer jacket from the tree farm, holding 2 shopping bags and smiling that smile that made his whole world brighter. My mom kicked me out, she said, her eyes sparkling with joy and mischief. Said my dad was fine, and I was moping around ruining her kitchen and clearly needed to be somewhere else. So I drove through the night to get here because I realized something. What's that? Nathan's voice was barely a whisper, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Home isn't a place, it's people. And my people are here. Nathan pulled her inside, into his arms, not caring that snow was melting on her jacket, not caring that the girls were watching with delighted expressions, not caring that this was fast and complicated and terrifying. She was here. She'd chosen them. You drove 3 hours in the snow on Christmas morning? I did. Emily smiled up at him. Someone told me once that family is the people you choose. And I choose you. All of you. Miss Bennet! 3 voices shrieked in unison, and suddenly Emily was surrounded by small bodies and laughter that filled every corner of the house. Nathan watched his daughters tackle Emily in a hug, watched his house come alive with joy he'd thought died with Sarah. And he realized something profound. Grief had taught him to appreciate happiness. Loss had taught him to treasure what he had. Darkness had taught him to recognize light when he found it. Sarah would always be part of their story, but Emily was the beginning of their next chapter. Later, after presents were opened and breakfast was eaten, and the girls were playing with their new toys, Nathan and Emily stood together by the Christmas tree. The angel on top still tilted slightly to the left, but Nathan thought maybe that was perfect. Nothing in life was perfectly balanced. You just learned to adjust. "Thank you," Nathan said, taking Emily's hand. "For what?" "For teaching me that it's okay to live again. That loving again doesn't mean forgetting. That my heart is big enough for both past and future." Emily squeezed his hand. "You taught me the same thing." They stood there together, watching the girls play, watching snow fall outside, watching their new family take shape. And Nathan understood finally what it meant to let go and hold on at the same time, to honor the past while building the future, to carry grief and joy in the same heart. This was healing, not forgetting, but growing, not replacing, but expanding. This was love, messy and complicated and imperfect and absolutely worth the risk. And as Sophie came running over to show them her new doll, as Lily demanded hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, as Grace asked if Emily could stay forever with the hopeful voice of a child who'd learned that forever sometimes ended too soon, Nathan looked at this woman who'd walked into their lives because 3 little girls had written a note, and he knew. Some things were worth being brave for. Some things were worth taking the leap into the unknown. Some things were worth believing in again, even after your faith had been shattered. Family wasn't just blood. It was choice. It was commitment. It was showing up even when things got hard, even when it would be easier to walk away. And love wasn't something you used up, a finite resource that ran out when tragedy struck. It was something that grew, that multiplied, that became more the more you gave it away. That was the lesson. That was what Sarah's death had taught him, and Emily's presence had confirmed. The heart breaks, but it also heals. And when it heals, it's bigger than before. Big enough to hold both grief and joy, both memory and hope, both yesterday and tomorrow. That's what made it all worth it.